Adrian, and today we are going to see how to craft a 3D scene directly in Spline with physics, so when the user comes on your website, he can interact directly with your website, with physics, with gravity, and it's pretty fun. Let's dive in. When you click on YouTube, in the link in the description, you go directly on this page. So click this vignette and you can check the file. So if you click in the file, you will be able to interact directly with it. So no, it's not what you want. So click outside of this zone and go to Remix here. Click on Remix and wait a bit. The file is loading. You can close the other window. Here on the left panel, you've got a lot of scenes. 12. In each scene we are going to learn something that is important to get to the final result. The scenes are not compulsory. If you already know how to use the camera and the basics, just go to the section you want to learn, and depending on your level you can just choose what you want to learn. My way of doing stuff is to explain to you why we do stuff, not just click there, and you've got the result. So I've dived through a lot of little sections to make you understand what I mean and how you can achieve that in Spline easily. You will have all the details, so I think the tutorial is pretty dense. I will try to make some shorter tutorial next time. But this is my way of sharing stuff, so if you're not okay with that, there's no problem. If you're okay with that, just go to the next section. We're going to check the basics of camera movements in Spline, and let's go. We are checking the 0xyz scene on the left panel, and you can see we've got our 3 dimensions. Maybe you know them, maybe you don't. Most of you are coming from 2D, so if you're a bit lost in 3D, you really need to understand that. The first thing you need to understand is that if you want to create an object in Spline, the best thing to do is to put it at 0. On the right panel you've got the position at 0, you've got X, Y and Z position. If I put everything at 0, my object will be centered in the scene. So if I orbit around it, pushing Alt or Command button and clicking with the mouse, and make my camera rotate around my object, everything will stay in place in the middle. So I remove my object and I've got my 3 dimensions. If I press play, I go to my dimensions and you see the X dimension you already know from 2D. That is the horizontal dimension, the Y dimension is the vertical one, and the Z dimension is the depth one. You really need to understand that. So this little view is made to make you understand the buttons here, the blue one, the green one and the red one, that fits the dimension, red one for X, green one for Y and blue one for Z. If you press the green button, your camera will turn on the top of your view, of your scene, and you won't see the green dimension, so the Y dimension, but you will look through that dimension. So the both thing you will see is the X dimension and the Z dimension. So you will be on the top of your scene. On the red dimension, you will only see the 2 other ones, so Y dimension and Z dimension. And if you press the blue one, you will look through the depth. So you will look through the blue dimension and you will just see Y dimension and X dimension. This is really important for the rest of all the stuff you will create in Spline. Merge with the grid panel in the global settings. If you don't see it, just press escape and it will appear. So if you've got an object selected, press escape and you've got the grid panel, that the global settings that will appear here. And if I change the grid will change dimension. So if I put the grid on floor XZ, I will have to choose the dimension, the button that is not X and is not Z. So I choose Y, and I will see my grid. Same thing for XY. If I've got XY, so I choose the button Z, and I will see my grid. And last dimension, YZ, and I choose X, and I will see my grid. If I change it, I won't see it. The basic grid is XZ, so I return on XZ. Okay guys, so now we are in the gravity section, and we are going to check the basics of physics. If I hit play, nothing happens at all. Okay, why? Because physics are not turned on by default in your scene. I will go to the right panel. If you don't see it, you have an element that is selected. You've got all the data relative to this element. If you want to check the panel, just press Escape, and you will go to the main panel. Here, go to Simulation and turn Physics on. Now I hit play, nothing happens. I select my element, the first one like that, and I go down to the Physics section. Here I've got to put this element under Dynamic. I hit play and nothing happens. I go down there and I will put gravity scale for this element. I will turn it on to 0.1. Now I hit play and my element is moving slowly because the gravity is really low. I will change this gravity to 1. If I hit play, gravity is playing nicely now. I want to see the difference between my three shapes. I will select my first shape and go down to gravity, put the element under dynamic, and go to gravity scale. I put 0.1. Every element has exactly the same tuning, and I will only change one thing, that is gravity. So I will select the second element, my second shape, the pink one, turn the gravity scale to 1. For the third one, I will click it and select the gravity scale and put it on 2. If I hit play, you see there is a lot of difference between gravity scales. 0.1 is like if you're on another planet, a small planet with low gravity. 1 is the gravity of the Earth, and 2 is an important gravity, I don't know, a planet that is very dense. That's it for gravity. You can play with it. You don't have any interaction for the moment. Okay guys, now we are on the second scene here, wait, and if I hit play, there is a strange feeling about our scene. The blocks are moving strangely, and this looks strange. I've got to put some weight. Gravity is not enough. We are going on to say we are selecting one element, for example the blue shape, and we are going down there in physics panel. We haven't seen the first button, based on visibility. What's it for? Yes or no possibilities. This is very important, because if your element is in the viewport panel, if you can see it, then gravity will be calculated for it. It will take some resources from your computer. If you turn no, there is no physics. If you turn yes, it will your scene. If you turn yes, your scene will always calculate the gravity for this element. So if you do that for everything, your computer will calculate everything, and it's not good if you want to put your scene online in a website. It will be too heavy. So, if possible, always turn on based on visibility. We've got these children fused or separate elements. If you make a group, all the elements in the group will behave the same way if they are fused, but each element will behave separately if they are separate. You've got two body type, positioned or dynamic. If my element is positioned, for example like this one, physics won't have any effect on it. Just for example, let's create a sphere here and I put some color on it. I've got my sphere. If my body type is positioned and I hit play, my sphere won't move. But if I put dynamic on, my sphere will fall. So physics will apply on it if it's in dynamic position. Let's go back to the main shapes. So the first blue shape is dynamic and the collider is simple, faster. Faster means the collision and the physics are way simpler. Like it's not really accurate, but it's okay because precise with my experience is really slow and is not working very nicely right now. Let's turn on this weight. So I've got now 0 weight as you've seen. I will turn 0.1 for the first one, 1 for the second element, and 2, that is the maximum. If I put 3, I will go back to... Oh no, it's not the maximum. Oh, I learned something today. What is the maximum? Okay, let's hit play. I don't know what will happen. Wow, excellent. This 999 weight is very good. How far can I go with that? Let's play. You cool. This is cool. Okay, let's try a bit more. 100,000. Poof. Yeah, cool. So let's go back to 2. Weight of 2. I don't know. Yeah, it's cool. It's enough for now. So you can see the difference. I will put 4 just for fun. And you can see the difference between 0, 1, nothing is happening, 1, a bit, 2. We've got some weight here. Okay, let's dive to the next section. We're in the third element, third scene on the left panel. Click it and you will switch to friction. We have the same friction for all elements. If I play the scene right now, there is no friction. And there is nothing to stop our shapes. Okay, let's change this. We will turn the blue shape at 0, 1. The pink shape at 0.4 and the green one at 1. Let's play it. You can see a difference between the different shapes, and this one is rolling because the friction is so important for it that it moves. There is no top for the friction. I think I can put the maximum for the green shape, and it will be pretty, yeah, it's the same thing, almost than 1 for this scene. So let's put it back to 1 and let's go to the next section, damping. Now we are in damping. Damping is like friction, a bit like friction, but in the air. This is a way to avoid objects to move infinitely, endlessly in 3D. So we will use it to avoid, for example, when you have a ball that is bouncing and the ball is bouncing so fast that it never ends and there is no gravity to take it down to the ground, the gravity is unbalanced with damping. So you have to change the damping so the object can fall, hit the ground, bounce, and go back to the ground properly. There is different damping. The first one here is already set up at 0.1. I will change it to 0 for the example. The pink one has a damping of 0.5, and the last one has a damping of 1. You can go to infinity for this one, but it's useless as when you put like something very, very high, there's no difference. Okay, so the only difference is when you go back to between 0 and 1. Okay, so damping is useful, you understand that, but it won't be the main important thing for you right now. Let's go to the next section, translation. Scene number 5. Okay, you open it if you want to follow directly in Spline. And we've got our 3 shapes as before, and we've got to check the axes as we've seen before, YZ, XY, XZ, because the objects here will move in 2 axes only, and you will see the difference. So they will, if you want to check translation, you select an object and you go down there and you've got translation. You can move them with X, Y, and Z. If I turn on X, Y, Z, I select my shape, the blue one. I go back to physics and I remove Z. So let's play. Okay, it's not moving. It's just moving on both axes, X and Y. X and Y. The second one, the pink one, has just translation turned on for Y and Z. Let's check the difference. Okay, so it's now just moving on Y and Z axis. So if I play it again, yeah, it's just falling and then moving on the right. So these 2 axes, blue and green axis. The last one, it's turned on, it's working, but it's moving on X and Z axis, X and Z axis. So there is no vertical here. It's not moving, it's just staying in place. You can tell me yes, but it has to rotate. But this is something we are going to see in the next section, rotation. And we are in scene 6 and we are checking rotation. Rotation and translation are working together, and for the blue shape I turn on translation and rotation. So the blue object will move in all directions. For the pink one, I turned on translation on Y and Z and rotation on Y and Z also. And for the last one, I turn on translation and rotation only for X and Z. So let's play it. Okay, so now we've got some translation and rotation happening at the same time here in all the directions, and you can see that the pink one that is moving only on Y and Z axis, Y and Z axis, is just staying in this area, moving on only 2 dimensions, vertically and then horizontally, but is turning the rotation also in 2 directions. So if you take the translation and the rotation and turn on everything, things will move naturally in all the directions. But why can we remove a translation or a rotation. In fact, if you want to play your scene on a website and you want to see the scene only from the front, if your element falls, it will go off the scene. Okay, maybe if I want to check my scene, on the website, and I don't want the elements to fall off, I can just turn off the dimension I don't need, like the X dimension here, and my object will stay in the scene no matter what. Okay. It's useful because sometimes you don't want your object to go off the screen when you're on a website, and you just want to keep it. When you check the website, you are in the front of your website and your object is falling, and you don't want it to go out of the scene, keeping it in a kind of a box. And if you remove some dimensions, it will stay no matter what. Even if there is a slope here, it will stay at the same place on the slope, not moving with gravity, with normal gravity. So it can be useful sometimes. Here we have got translation and rotation turn on. So now it's fun. We've got all the dimensions: gravity, weight, translation, rotation. We've also got damping. And now we can start to play. Now it's starting to be interesting. I know it was a bit of theory before, but it was to explain you why we are doing what we are doing. And maybe it will help you to better understand Spline. And I didn't want to make a tutorial. If you're still here, that was just about making something work and you don't know why it's working. Now you've got all the basics, so you can process it by yourself. But I've put the scenes here, so you can just copy paste them. And now we are going to create an interaction between this ball and all elements. If I hit play, you can see that the ball is following my cursor and I can hit all the elements. Okay, let's turn this off. How do I do that? I create a sphere. Here I don't care about physics, I just let the basics turn on and I don't touch the physics. I will just go under events. Okay, so I turn it off and now you can see that the ball can't follow my cursor. So this is an event. An event is something that you make happen to an element on your scene. So I will turn it on again. It's really simple. You go in the edit events and you change it from start to follow. Don't touch anything aligned with camera damping, offset. It's not very important for the moment, but if you want to know what it does, you can change the planes in which your object will move. As we have seen before, you've got different planes: floor XZ, XY from back, and sides YZ. Okay. So damping, we have seen it before. Your element will move, will take time to follow your cursor. If I turn on damping, my sphere will take a lot of time to follow my cursor. If I go far like that, it will be very slow to follow my cursor. So let's turn it to 1 and it will be quick. Offset, if I want it offset of my cursor. It's not exactly at my cursor position. I will make it far like that. Okay, you understand, it's quite simple. Let's go back to 0. And I've got my translation. Translation is important because remember, we've got our x's. X
red one, Y green one, and Z blue one. If I remove translation for the Y-axis, for example, the ball won't leave the bottom of our panel. It won't go up. It will stay all the time on the ground, okay? And you understand that it can be interesting to play with, because if I just keep one dimension, I will only move in this dimension. But let's put everything and turn it on, and now I can play with all my elements, and it's quite funny. But as you see, in 3D, moving in 3D, sometimes if I want to have my green box, it's not working properly. So I prefer most of the time to remove one dimension I don't want, and it's way simpler to interact properly with my elements. Okay guys, now you've got everything you need to create your scene, not mine, your scene. I prefer to say it, I don't want you to just make what I've done. Make your own stuff and it will be great, because trust yourself. Maybe you want to make what I've done and do it exactly the same, but there is no point. Do your stuff, do your own stuff. It's fun, and with all what you've seen till there, you can make it. But I've got some gifts for you. You've got some shapes here. So open this and you will be able to take these shapes. But there is a little trick I want you to understand right now in Spline. You can see the shapes are moving. I put an event on them. If I select one shape, there is a base state and a state. When I start playing, the shape will move to the current state, to the last state. In 10 seconds and linear mode, it will be on repeats, and it will be a loop, and an infinite loop. The problem if I create a ball or what you want, and I make it follow my cursor, I go to events, I go back to follow, I remove Z. Something is wrong because there is no collision at all. This is a spline issue, I will say. Because if I've got an event on my element, it won't interact with physics, even if dynamic is turned on. Okay, so let's go back there. I've got my state, my event. If I hit play, it's turning well. The spring is turning. But if I turn on dynamic, it will fall and the event won't have any impact on it. It won't turn. If you copy paste the shapes here in your scene, you have to remove the events and the states. Now the object will properly respond to gravity, and you will be able to interact with it. Wow, this one is really bouncy. Our scene here is almost what we have in the final scene, but let's play a bit with gravity. And what you can see here is that our object is falling from the U. The U is a simple letter, in fact. Maybe you don't have the proper font, but here it's Inter. The font, if you go down in text, the font is Inter. It's extra light, and it's not a shape. You can keep it like that. You can keep it as a letter, and you can put some objects in it. For this kind of letters, if I want my object to interact with the letter, I found that for the collider, precise is better than simple. Because when you've got a bigger object, it will be easier for it to properly interact with the object when the two shapes are quite the same. Here it's working pretty well, but I've seen it's sometimes not working pretty well with different kind of letters. Here we are precise and it's not working so well. Let's go back to simple if you want it. Another problem is when I don't scale my main shape, the pink one here, you can see that when I hit play, this shape is going out of these limits and is falling from the scene. So we have to do something to keep the shape inside the U. Not for every dimension, but you will have to turn off one of the dimension X, Y, or Z. For this example, it will be the blue dimension. So the Z dimension, we have to turn it off in translation, not in rotation. The object has to rotate in all dimensions, but if you do that, the object will stay in this area, in these two dimensions, and won't go out by the back or by the front of your letter. We are almost done. We are on the last scene, and this is the scene where you can create everything with what you've learned till now to make this scene working pretty well. If I hit play, okay, my objects stay in the U. They are not falling behind. And I can play with them. It's pretty cool, by the way. It's pretty cool. It's funny. And my controller, here's a green one, is working pretty well. What is missing to create everything is the light system. So on my scenes, I've got a spotlight. And the spotlight here is just above the scene. You can change the angle to light the scene a bit differently, or the distance. The cone is showing the light distance, so I will push it a bit further than our scene, and the edge blur will change the size of the lights, so go as you want. Now I can do something else. Last tip, if you want to make your scene really stand out, is to turn off this, to keep this light, but to change the position of this light. So I will drag it down and I will rotate it a bit and take it a bit further from my scene. So my scene is lightened with this light. Okay, it's cool, but a bit strange. I will push it on the side and rotate it a bit. So I've got a lighting that is a bit different, but it is very strong. I will change it a bit to make it lighter. And now my scene is properly lightened. I will turn on the follow events on my spotlight, as we've seen before. Follow events, and I will make it move on the X and Y axis. I remove Z, and so now my light is following my cursor, and I'm lighting the scene as I want. So have fun with it.